Peace, family. Your boy Treetop Chris checking in, and welcome back to Treetop Finance, where we talk about everything finance, as well as wealth building strategies and credit funding. Today, we're going to talk about something a little bit different. It's the Treetop Paycheck Budgeting Strategy. That's right, a Treetop budgeting strategy for when you get your paycheck. I'm going to teach you how to break everything down so that everything's paid, you're set up for retirement, and we can move forward together and grow together, because that's our slogan, grow with us. All right, so check it out. All right, family, y'all ready? Let's get into the first step in budgeting that paycheck, and that's going to be your employer match. So a lot of light bulbs go off when I say employer match, and that's because a lot of the W-2 employees that we have that are watching this channel, they have something called an employer match for their retirement fund. So every time you get a paycheck, you got money coming out for a bunch of different things. But some of the people who actually care about their future, they actually invest in their future by putting some of their funds into a retirement account. So a lot of the different companies, they'll match whatever you put in up to a certain percentage. If you're lucky enough to get a job that matches 100% of that percentage, this process right here is going to help you out a lot. But this is the first step, and I'll explain why a little bit later. But if you pay attention here, we got some different retirement funds. We got a 401k, a 403b, and we have the Roth 401k. I don't know if you can see that. We got a little bit of light on there, but this is my favorite right here, Roth 401k. But if you pay attention here, say you make $100,000 a year, right? And your employer want to match 100% of your contributions to any one of these funds up to a certain percentage. In this case, we're going to use 5%, right? So if they're going to match 100% up to 5%, you put in 5% per year, right? So if you make 100,000, that's 5,000. If you put in 5,000, they're going to match your 5,000. Then you're going to end up with 10,000. Now remember, the 5,000 that you put in is going to be a tax write-off, right? Because you put it in these accounts, they're going to remove this from your total salary or income for the year. So if you made 100,000, it's going to be 95,000 when you file your taxes, because 5% of that went to your retirement fund. And they're not going to give you the 5% that your employer may get. Your employer may get, because the employer gets to write off their 5%, but you're going to write off this 5%. You're going to make sure every year you got 10,000 that's going into your retirement fund. And that's the first step. Okay, so what's the next step? Paying off high interest debt. Oh my goodness. High interest debt kills us in this game. A lot of people, they talk about not having debt at all. Welcome to America. The whole country's in debt. Get over it. Let's focus on how we can get it down and make sure that we get our paychecks stabilized. And the first thing that we have to do, the second thing that we have to do actually, is to pay off high interest debt. And I say that high interest debt is anything that's above 7% is ridiculous in debt. And the reason that I say that is because if I was to compound interest at 7%, that's a good return on investment. So I always try to say, hey, if I want to make 7%, I'm giving 7% plus to somebody else. That offsets my ability to recreate my funds and get income for myself. So I always say anything higher than 7% is a high interest debt. So what we do in the second part of this paycheck is to focus on any debt that has a high interest rate of 7% or more. Remember, don't do this. What is this? Minimum payments. Yes, I made the minimum payment last month, I'm fine. Remember, the interest rate on some of those credit cards, 25%, 18, 25, 28, man, it's crazy. Some of them are lower than that. But if they're high, just think about this for a second, right? If you make the minimum payment, you have to make the minimum payment plus their percentage and interest. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the minimum payment and we're going to add maybe half of an extra payment to kind of cover that interest if you can afford it. If you give me a call, we can talk about some better strategies on how to pull some extra funds out of the cash flow so we can make more than the minimum payment. But remember, minimum payments are bad. Never make the minimum payment. So for instance, right, let me get, say you got $35 a month is the minimum payment, right? You're going to put $70 a month. $70 a month. Because if there's any interest on top of that 35, it's going to take away from the $35. So you're not really putting in $35. So what you can do is you make the first payment right here when your payment is due, and then you make a second payment of $35. Right? So you got a second payment of $35 on a statement date. Now, we talked about due dates and statement dates in some of my other videos. If you follow me on Instagram, TikTok, we talk about that a lot. But remember, due date, statement. So on a due date, statement date. Due date, I'm talking about my handwriting. Due date comes, you make that payment, and 2 days before the statement date, you make the second payment. So all in all, you pay $70. You're going to avoid that interest payment, and it's going to help you get out of that high interest debt as we move along through the paycheck strategy. Okay, family, so let's move into the third option, which is the emergency funds. Basically, this is really self-explanatory, but to go into it more in depth, if you're getting that paycheck every week, you want to make sure that you want to put some money to the side for emergency funds. If you are a person that is single, I usually recommend about 3 months worth of reserves, and these are cash reserve. Cash, that's right, cash, all cash. Now, there needs to be cash because if anything was to happen to your credit, or if you take a loss and you got to use those credit cards, you want to be able to have reserves to pay bills in cash just in case they try to take that credit away from you. You still have cash. So if you're a single person, I always recommend at least 3 months worth of reserves for you. You don't have anybody else to worry about. You're a lone soldier out there, for better or for worse. But if you have a family, I always suggest at least 6 months because you got some little people running around. If you don't have little people running around, you got a significant other. You want to make sure that you can at least cover your bills. And what does that mean, like cover your bills? So basically, like if you have, say, if your bills are $2,000 a month, right? Now you want 3 months worth of reserves. So you just time that by 3, right? So now you're going to have 6,000. 6,000 in reserves for this guy. And you do the same thing for everybody else, So you want to have at least $6,000 if you're that single guy and your bills are $2,000 a month. And you can, of course, use that for each one of these. But for the entrepreneurs, now you're used to a lifestyle where you get large sums of money. For some of my seasoned entrepreneurs, and for the people who are just starting out with a small business or just becoming entrepreneurs, they understand the ebb and flow of going up and down. Just you're at the peak of the sales, everyone's coming to you, you're making a lot of money. During the downtime, you got competitors, you got slowness. I always say at least 12 months for you as an entrepreneur, because anything could happen in that 12 months. If you're doing something where you get large returns, you could be getting down to month 7 and then you get a large return, and that could last you the rest of the year. So if you're an entrepreneur, I always tell people at least 12 months for an entrepreneur. In life insurance, man, like, okay, we got cash reserves, right? These are for our bills. But if something happens to you, you don't want to just have your cash reserves to pay for your family and your loved ones. So, going back to your employer match, your employer should have life insurance as well. There are other better life insurance products out there that we'll talk about in another time. But for the most part, it's really, really simple. This is part 3 in this strategy. And just remember, emergency funds. You got to keep that cash on hand for at least this amount of time with that life insurance to cover you for everything. Let's move on to the next step. Okay, so step 4, family, is wealth building investments. Yes, I know we talked about in the first step in investing in your company's 401ks and Roth 401ks and 403bs and things of that nature, but you still want to do your own investing. So we try to do at least 15% of our net income for the year for wealth building investments. That could be in real estate, it could be in tech. I got some different examples down here. Vanguard is a place where you can invest in different mutual funds. You got Fundrise, it's like a real estate investment type of trust where you can invest in different real estate investment ventures that are out there that other people are managing. We can talk about syndication another time, but just for the sake of this example, 15% of your net. If you have $100,000 a year, you want to put in at least $15,000 of that into your wealth building investments. And I also have the Roth IRA right here. I love the Roth IRA because it's after tax dollars. So basically, once you get to the point where you can take that money out, it's untaxed. At the time of this recording, I believe right now, the max that you can put in there for a tax write-off is about $6,000. For the people who are already using the Roth IRA, they know about this $6,000 that you can put in there. Vanguard, that's just for the different mutual funds. They have a bunch of different stocks that are put together, and you can invest in large stocks like Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, and they'll be in a portfolio where you can take your funds and invest in all of them at once to get a partial piece of each one. And then, that usually always returns pretty well. I have some suggestions for that we can talk about in another video. You can check out Fundrise. I don't know if they're still taking anybody with Fundrise. But again, this is fourth step in the process. Make sure that you're doing step 1, which is with your job, and you're doing step 4, which is for yourself. All right, so family, this is step 5. We talked about employee matches. We talked about paying off high interest debt. We talked about emergency funds. We talked about retirement funds. We talked about them, but we didn't say exactly how much to put in each one of them per month. So this is going to kind of come down to how your paycheck is given out. But you want to take everything that we talked about before on top of what I talk about in step 5 to put everything together for your own budget for when you get your paycheck. Now, granted, again, I'm a financial advisor and I work with people who are, who don't have the time to do their own finances, or who just want someone who has more expertise, or they spent the extra time to learn about these strategies in depth. Because I know a lot of people want to learn about this stuff, and you got YouTube Academy, your favorite place in the world. My favorite place in the world is where I am, to learn about these things, and we can get into more more in depth into paying off high interest credit cards using the treetop banking strategy. We can talk about more investment options when it comes to Vanguard. We can talk about more investment options when it comes to real estate investment trusts and getting into funding. But let's get into this, because this is where the discipline is going to come into play. So in this strategy, we call this the grow your tree strategy. And basically, we look at all these different areas of your life as trees, because if you're going to plant something, you want to fertilize it, you want to feed it, you want to give it what it needs to grow. And these parts of your life are going to always grow if you follow these strategies. So first things first, you get your paycheck, right? Me particularly, me and my wife, we try to save for another house. The house is going to be one of the most important things for us. So say for instance, you want to put in $1,000 a month, right? $1,000 a month, and that's about $250 a week, right? So $250 a week for the house, right? So we got the savings. For your savings, we're going to do $50 a week. $50 a week for savings, right? And then we're going to do for the car. So if you want like a special car, I mean, if you already have a car and you're making monthly payments, of course, this is going to change as a bill. But if you're saving up to get a car, $100 a week, $100 a week for the car until you have it. And again, these are all hypothetical. I'm just trying to help you break everything down. But this one right here is travel, right? So one thing I had a problem with when it came to working hard, because I am a W-2 employee and I'm an entrepreneur, is finding the time to enjoy myself, because I keep my head in the books. I keep my head on, my entrepreneurship and working, but I don't travel as much. So I decided to add this in here for everyone, including myself, to just put some money to the side for travel. Then when you want to go ahead and travel, you can use a credit card, but if you're already saving for it, it just makes it that much better for you. So we're going to put about $50 a week into travel, right? And lastly, we're going to do retirement. So remember we talked about all those different retirement funds and things that we can use to set up for retirement. Remember I said it was 15% of your income for the year. Just to break that down, if you don't have that 15%, or you want to see how that looks, I'm going to base this off of that $6,000 a year that I said for for Roth. So 6,000 a year, that's about 115 a month, right? So you got 115 a month going out for your retirement, $50 a week going to travel, $100 a week going to the car, $50 a week going to savings, and if you're trying to save for a house, I say $250 a week. You don't have to do that, but this is just giving you an example of how to break everything down. You got the first steps, right? You got an idea of how to grow your trees. You put it all together, or you call me and I do it for you. Either way, you're going to come out on top. But just to give you my thoughts on everything, this is something that I physically do. This is something that I help break down for my clients because, part of what we do, we get our clients high limit credit cards, we get them high limit lines of credit, and a lot of those people, they're for businesses. But for the people who just call and they need financial planning, putting this all into perspective is easy from the outset, but when you're looking at the numbers, it might be a little bit more difficult. That's why I always tell people reach out to me. The link is in the bio, so you can reach out to me directly and we can talk. You don't have to pay for anything like that. But I really think that this strategy will help a lot of people out if you just take a step back and try to be deliberate, intentional with your paycheck. Because after you do all of this, anything left is yours. If you want to go out and eat and do whatever, you can change this travel to miscellaneous funds. You could just put $50 a week away for miscellaneous stuff, or you can up this if you have more money, but you've covered everything else. It's a sandbox, this world we live in. But I just want to help everyone out there with these strategies. If you have any questions or concerns, of course, just let me know. It's your boy Treetop Chris checking in. Peace and love.